First Contact Academy. The crystalline spires of the Galactic Defense Academy pierced the purple sky of Nexus Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 moons in a dazzling display. Inside her office, Commandant Zorak studied the application before her with all 4 of her eyes, her scaled skin shifting colors in confusion. "You cannot be serious about this appointment, Professor Tilara," she clicked, addressing the holographic figure floating above her desk. The being of pure energy pulsed in response. The human candidate, Maya Chen, scored extraordinarily well on all theoretical examinations. Tilara's voice resonated. "Her tactical analysis capabilities exceed 98% of our current class." "Theory isn't the issue." Zorax's tail lashed in agitation. "This is a combat academy, the most prestigious in 12 galaxies. We train warriors, not scholars. Humans are." She struggled to find a diplomatic term. "Fragile." The energy being flickered with amusement. "Perhaps you should meet her yourself before making that assessment." Maya Chen stood in the Academy's vast arrival chamber, her standard-issue uniform neat despite the long journey from Earth. At 5'8", she was dwarfed by the towering alien architecture and the various species around her. A group of crystalline beings floated past, their bodies refracting light like living prisms. A massive creature with armored plates and multiple limbs stomped by, barely sparing her a glance. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. The gravity here was 1.2 times Earth normal. Uncomfortable, but manageable. The air was thinner too, though the atmospheric processors in the building adjusted the mixture for different species' needs. She trained for this, spent months in variable pressure chambers and gravity simulators. Still, theory was different from reality. "Cadet Chen." The voice came from behind her, a complex harmony of clicks and subharmonic vibrations. Maya turned, coming face to abdomen with Commandant Zorax. She lifted her gaze, meeting all 4 of the alien's eyes with carefully practiced calm. "Commandant," Maya saluted crisply, the gesture modified slightly to account for human physiology. "Reporting as ordered." Zorax circled her slowly, tail swishing. "You understand this academy has never admitted a human before. Our training regimens are designed for species with natural advantages, enhanced strength, regenerative capabilities, built-in armor." "With respect, Commandant," Maya replied, "humans have our own advantages." "Oh." One of Zorax's eye ridges lifted. "And those would be?" "That's for me to demonstrate, and you to discover." Maya's voice held no challenge, just quiet confidence. The Commandant's scales shifted to a deeper blue, surprise, though Maya pretended not to notice she'd recognized the emotional display. Bold words for a species that evolved on a single planet with minimal natural defenses. "The best defense isn't always armor, Commandant. Sometimes it's being underestimated." A low rumble emerged from Zorax's thorax, their version of a laugh. "Well, you'll have plenty of opportunities to prove that theory. Your first training session begins in 1 hour. Try not to get killed, cadet. The paperwork would be excessive." Maya watched the Commandant stride away, her posture perfect despite the urge to slump in relief. Around her, other cadets whispered and gestured, some with appendages she couldn't begin to name. She caught fragments of conversations in various languages, her neural translator working overtime. "Soft-skinned. No carapace. Primitive species. Won't last a week." Maya allowed herself a small smile. Let them think what they wanted. Humans had been surprising alien species since first contact, and she intended to uphold that tradition. She checked her schedule on her neural interface. Basic combat training in Training Hall 7. Time to show them what primitive really meant. The training hall was a massive dome of some material that seemed to drink in light. Various pieces of equipment were scattered around, most of them unrecognizable to human eyes. About 30 other cadets were already assembled, representing at least a dozen different species. Their instructor was a being that seemed to be made entirely of metallic cables and joints, its face a complex arrangement of sensory apparatus. "I am combat instructor X8," it announced, voice perfectly modulated. "Today we begin assessment of your natural combat capabilities. Pair off with someone of approximately equal mass." Maya stood alone as the others quickly found partners. Finally, a tall serpentine creature with iridescent scales and 4 arms slithered toward her. "Looks like we're the leftovers," it said, voice surprisingly melodious. "I'm Shura. Try not to break too easily." "Maya," she replied with a nod. "Same to you." XR8's optical sensors focused on their pair. "Cadet Shura, your species' superior strength and speed make this an unfair match." "Perhaps." "It's fine," Maya interrupted. "I'll manage." The instructor's sensors whirred as they adjusted. "Very well. Basic sparring forms. Begin on my mark." Shura moved like liquid mercury, all 4 arms striking in perfect coordination. Maya didn't try to match the alien's speed or strength. That would have been suicide. Instead, she watched, learned, moved just enough to avoid serious damage. Each strike taught her something new about her opponent's reach, preferred patterns, balance points. "Stop holding back," Shura hissed in frustration after several minutes of failed attacks. Maya's smile widened slightly. "Who says I am?" The next strike came faster, harder. Maya slipped inside it, using Shura's momentum against them. A precise strike to a nerve cluster she'd identified earlier, and one of the 4 arms went temporarily numb. The serpentine alien's eyes widened in shock. "Interesting technique," X8 commented, sensors whirring rapidly. "Unorthodox but effective. Continue." By the end of the session, the entire class was watching their bout. Maya had disabled 2 more of Shura's arms, though she'd taken some solid hits in return. Her ribs ached, and she could feel bruises forming, but she kept her breathing steady, her movements efficient. "Enough," X8 called finally. "An educational demonstration. Cadet Chen, report to medical for assessment." "I'm fine," Maya started to say, but the instructor's tone left no room for argument. As she left the training hall, she heard Shura talking to another cadet. "Did you see how she moved? Always just enough, never wasted energy. And those nerve strikes. How did she even know where to hit?" Maya smiled to herself. Day 1, and already the whispers were changing. This was going to be interesting. Hidden strengths. The medical bay of the Galactic Defense Academy resembled a cross between a laboratory and an art installation. Diagnostic equipment in impossible shapes hung from the ceiling, while healing chambers of various sizes lined the walls, each customized for different species' physiologies. Dr. Kakal, the chief medical officer, was a being of pure light contained within a sophisticated environmental suit. Their voice emerged as perfectly modulated tones. "Fascinating. Your tissue regeneration has already begun." Maya sat on an examination platform, holding still as scanning beams passed over her bruised ribs. "Human bodies are pretty good at healing themselves." "Yes, but the efficiency is remarkable. No external catalysts, no regenerative chambers needed." Katal's light form pulsed with interest. "And you say this is normal for your species?" "More or less, though some humans heal faster than others." The doctor's next words were interrupted by a commotion at the medical bay entrance. A massive figure ducked through the doorway. A cravenite, one of the most physically imposing species in known space. Their exoskeleton was cracked in several places, purple blood seeping through the fissures. "What happened?" Call demanded, floating quickly to the new patient. "Endurance training," the cravenite growled. "The gravity generators malfunctioned. Increased to triple normal intensity without warning." Maya's eyes narrowed. Equipment malfunctions were becoming suspiciously common lately. Just yesterday, the atmospheric processors in Training Hall 3 had accidentally switched to methane-based composition mid-session. The day before, a combat drone had inexplicably ignored its safety protocols. Triple gravity. Kittle's form flickered with concern. That could have killed someone. Who else was in the training hall? Just the human. The Cravenite's compound eyes shifted to Maya. She's still there. Insisted on finishing the session. Kittle's light form pulsed rapidly. You left her in triple gravity. Why wasn't she brought here immediately? She refused to leave, said something about getting used to it, and kept doing push-ups. Maya slid off the examination platform. Speaking of which, I should get back. Still have 2 sets to finish. Absolutely not. Kittle moved to block her path. You need rest and... Doctor, Maya interrupted gently. Human muscles get stronger when we stress them. As long as we don't push too far, and we give ourselves time to recover, we adapt. It's how our bodies work. But triple gravity just means I'll adapt faster. Maya rolled her shoulders, testing the movement. The bruises from yesterday's sparring session were already fading. Trust me, this isn't the strangest thing humans have adapted to. She left the medical bay, aware of the bewildered stares following her. The corridors were quieter now, most cadets either in training or rest cycles. Maya's steps were measured, careful. The truth was, triple gravity hurt like hell. Every movement felt like swimming through concrete, but she'd calculated the risks. Human bones could handle the stress, at least for short periods. And she'd been training for this since before leaving Earth. The training hall was empty when she returned, the gravity still distorted. Maya took a deep breath and stepped through the threshold. The weight slammed into her immediately, trying to drive her to her knees. She refused to bend. 1 push-up at a time. 1 step at a time. Humans had evolved as persistence predators, designed to keep going long after other species would have given up. Maya had learned their evolutionary history well before coming here. It was time to remind the galaxy why Earth's apex predators had dominated their planet. Hours later, Commandant Zorax reviewed the training hall's sensor logs with Professor Tulera. 3 hours, Zorax's scales shifted through patterns of disbelief. She stayed in triple gravity for 3 hours and maintained form throughout her exercises. Tulera's energy form pulsed. Most interesting was her heart rate, elevated but steady. She wasn't pushing her limits. She was conditioning herself. Impossible. No species can just decide to adapt to those conditions. That's what makes humans unique, Commandant. They don't wait for evolution to adapt them to their environment. They force their bodies to adapt through sheer determination. The next morning, Maya arrived at combat training exactly on time, moving smoothly despite the previous day's exertion. The whispers started immediately. Heard she stayed in triple gravity. Didn't even use a healing chamber. Just kept going. Combat instructor Xerate's sensors focused on her with new intensity. Cadet Chen, you will spar with Kovacs today. A ripple of excitement went through the assembled cadets. Kovacs was a tauren, a species engineered for combat. 3 meters tall, with reinforced bone structure and naturally occurring plasma channels in their arms. They were considered the elite warriors of known space. Kovacs stepped forward, plasma crackling along their forearms. I will try not to permanently damage you, human. Maya settled into a ready stance, expression calm. Appreciate the thought. Shall we begin? Rising tensions. The training hall fell silent as Maya and Kovacs circled each other. The tauren warrior moved with fluid grace despite their massive size, plasma channels pulsing with barely contained energy. Maya's movements were economical, precise, her eyes constantly scanning her opponent's form. Kovacs struck first, a blindingly fast combination of strikes that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Maya slipped between them, moving like water around rocks. She didn't attempt to block. Against a tauren's strength, that would have been suicidal. Instead, she focused on reading patterns, identifying rhythms. Stop dancing and fight. Kovacs growled, their frustration manifesting as increased plasma discharge. Maya didn't respond. She was too busy analyzing. The plasma channels followed Kovacs's circulatory system. There were nodes, connection points where the energy concentrated before discharge. And between those nodes, she ducked under another strike, finally launching her own attack. Her fingers struck precisely between two plasma nodes on Kavax's right arm. The energy flow stuttered, disrupted. Kavax's eyes widened in shock. What did you? Maya was already moving, targeting another node cluster. This time, Kavax caught her with their left arm, sending her flying across the training hall. She rolled with the impact, coming up in a defensive stance. The breath had been knocked from her lungs, and she could taste blood where she'd bitten her cheek. But she was smiling. Impressive recovery, Instructor X8 commented, their sensors whirring rapidly. Continue. The next few minutes were a dance of contrasts. Kavax's raw power against Maya's precision, engineered perfection versus adaptive capability. Maya took hits that would have crushed lesser species, but she kept moving, kept analyzing, kept striking at the weaknesses she'd identified. By the end of the session, Kavax's right arm was completely offline, its plasma channels disrupted. The Tauran warrior stared at Maya with a mixture of disbelief and something else. Rage. How? Kavax demanded. How did you know about the plasma node vulnerabilities? I studied xenobiology before coming here, Maya replied, wiping blood from her split lip. Your species' technical specifications are in the public domain. The plasma channel architecture is considered a triumph of bioengineering. You? Kavax's remaining plasma channels flared dangerously. You dare to suggest our sacred combat enhancement is a mere technical specification. Knowledge is just another form of strength, Maya said quietly. Humans had to learn that lesson early. We weren't born with natural weapons or armor. We had to understand to survive. The tension in the training hall was palpable. Other cadets watched the exchange with a mixture of fascination and unease. Kavax's pride had been wounded, and everyone knew wounded pride could be more dangerous than any physical injury. This session is concluded, X8 announced, their sensors detecting the rising hostility. Cadet Chen, report to medical for assessment. Cadet Kavax, engineering will assist with plasma channel realignment. Maya turned to leave, but Kavax's voice stopped her. This isn't over, human. You have insulted the honor of the Tauran warrior caste. No insult was intended, Maya replied without turning around. Just survival. The following days brought a series of escalating incidents. Maya's quarters lost atmospheric regulation during sleep cycle. Fortunately, she'd taken to wearing an emergency breather after the first accident. The gravity in her preferred training room would randomly spike or drop. Training drones seemed to malfunction only when she was using them. Through it all, she adapted. When the atmosphere thinned, she adjusted her breathing techniques. When gravity shifted, she modified her movements. When drones went rogue, she treated it as enhanced combat training. But she wasn't naive. She knew Kavax was behind the incidents, using their advanced technical knowledge to orchestrate these accidents. The Tauran warrior had gathered a group of supporters, other cadets who resented the humans' continued success. You should file a formal complaint, HFY suggested during their shared meal period. The serpentine alien had become something of an ally since their first sparring match. These accidents are becoming too frequent to ignore. Maya shook her head, carefully consuming her nutrient paste. No evidence, and even if there was, a complaint would just validate their belief that humans are weak. There's nothing weak about seeking justice. True, but there's something to be said for letting your enemies underestimate you. Maya's eyes tracked Kavax across the dining hall. They're so focused on proving human weakness that they're not seeing human strength. And what strength is that? Maya's smile held no humor. Pattern recognition, problem solving, adaptation. Kavax thinks they're testing my limits. They don't realize they're helping me evolve. HFY's scales shifted in a pattern Maya had learned to recognize as concern. Be careful, Maya. Taurans are proud, and Kavax is considered exceptional even among their kind. Pride can be a weakness too, Maya replied. Humans learned that lesson the hard way, back when we thought we were alone in the universe. We had to unlearn a lot of pride to survive first contact. Later that night, reviewing combat footage in her quarters, Maya's neural interface pinged with an incoming message. The sender was anonymous, but the content was clear enough. A formal challenge, issued under ancient Academy protocols. Kovacs was tired of proxy attacks. They wanted direct confrontation. Maya read the terms carefully, her mind already analyzing possibilities, calculating risks, formulating strategies. The challenge would be public, witnessed by the entire Academy. Victory could be achieved through submission or incapacitation. No weapons allowed, only natural abilities. She smiled grimly. Kovacs still didn't understand. Humans had turned their entire evolution into a weapon. Every limitation had become an adaptation, every weakness transformed into strength. Her response was simple. Challenge accepted. Breaking point. The Academy's Grand Arena hadn't been used for a formal challenge in over 50 cycles. Its crystalline dome stretched high above the combat floor, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and environmental needs. Tiered seating surrounded the arena in a perfect circle, currently filled with every cadet and instructor on campus. Maya stood in the preparation chamber, methodically stretching muscles that still ached from her intensive training. The past week had been spent studying every recorded instance of Tauran combat, analyzing their strengths and weaknesses, and pushing her own body to its limits. "You don't have to go through with this." Dr. Katal's light form pulsed with concern as they conducted the pre-combat medical scan. "The challenge protocols allow for withdrawal without loss of status." "That's not an option," Maya replied, rolling her shoulders. "This isn't just about me anymore. This is about every human who might want to attend the Academy in the future." The doctor's scanning beam flickered across her body. "Your muscle density has increased by 12% since your arrival. Bone density up 8%. Remarkable adaptation, but Kovacs still outmatches you in raw physical capability by several orders of magnitude." Maya smiled. "Good thing I'm not planning to match them in raw physical capability then." "Your strategy?" "Let's just say I've been paying attention in xenobiology class." She checked the chrono display. "It's time." The arena's environmental systems hummed as they adjusted to optimal conditions for both competitors. The combat floor was a marvel of adaptive technology, its surface able to provide secure footing for any species while absorbing impacts to prevent serious injury. Kovacs entered from the opposite side of the arena, their massive form drawing cheers from their supporters. The Tauran's plasma channels pulsed with barely contained energy, casting a blue glow across their armored skin. Commandant Zorax's voice echoed through the arena. "This challenge has been issued and accepted under ancient Academy protocols. Victory will be determined by submission or incapacitation. Medical intervention will result in immediate disqualification. Are both combatants prepared?" "Ready?" Kovacs's voice boomed. "Ready," Maya answered, her voice calm but carrying. "Begin." Kovacs moved with explosive speed, plasma channels flaring as they charged. Most opponents would have retreated, tried to maintain distance. Maya did the opposite. She stepped into the attack, ducking under Kovacs's guard. Her fingers struck precise points along the Tauran's thoracic ridge, targeting nerve clusters she'd identified in her research. Kovacs's right leg stumbled, their perfect balance momentarily disrupted. "First blood to the human," someone murmured in the crowd. Kovacs recovered quickly, spinning with devastating force. Their arm caught Maya in the midsection, sending her flying. She rolled with the impact, but everyone heard the crack of breaking ribs. "Submit," Kovacs demanded. "You cannot win this through trickery and weak points." Maya rose slowly, one arm pressed against her side. "You still don't understand," she said, loud enough for her voice to carry. "Everything humans have achieved, we've achieved through understanding, through turning knowledge into strength." She began to move differently now, her steps following a precise pattern across the arena floor. Kovacs pursued, but Maya was dictating the flow of combat, leading them in an increasingly complex dance. In the observation booth, Professor Tilura's energy form pulsed with sudden realization. The arena's resonance patterns. She's using the crystalline structure of the dome to affect Kavax's plasma channels. The Tauran warrior had noticed too late. The complex web of movements had positioned them at a focal point where the arena's crystalline structure created subtle harmonic frequencies. Their plasma channels began to flicker erratically. "What have you done?" Kavax roared, their precise control starting to slip. "Applied physics," Maya answered, still moving, still leading them through the pattern. "Your plasma channels are sensitive to certain frequencies. The arena's structure can amplify those frequencies if you know exactly where to stand. I spent a lot of time studying the architectural plans." Kavax charged again, but their movements were becoming uncoordinated as their bioengineered weapons systems fluctuated. Maya continued to strike at nerve clusters, her attacks precise despite her injured ribs. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the supposedly inferior human systematically dismantled one of the most advanced warrior species in known space, not through superior strength or natural weapons, but through careful study, precise application of knowledge, and the willingness to endure pain to achieve victory. Finally, Kavax's plasma channels overloaded completely, the feedback dropping them to their knees. Maya stood over them, breathing hard, one arm still pressed against her injured side. "Submit," she said quietly. "Please, don't make this worse than it needs to be." For a moment, the only sound in the arena was the hum of environmental systems. Then Kavax raised their head, meeting Maya's eyes. Part 5. Evolution of Understanding. "I submit," Kavax said, their voice resonating through the silent arena. "The victory is yours, human." Maya immediately stepped back, offering a formal bow despite her injured ribs. "You fought with honor." The arena erupted in a cacophony of sounds, clicks, whistles, electromagnetic pulses, and dozens of other alien vocalizations. Medical teams rushed forward to attend to both combatants, but Maya waved them toward Kavax first. The Tauran warrior's plasma channel overload could have lasting effects if not treated promptly. "Fascinating." Dr. Katal's light form pulsed as they scanned Maya's injuries. "You knew you would sustain damage, so you deliberately conditioned your body beforehand to better handle the impact. The increased bone and muscle density. Humans call it training for the hit," Maya explained, wincing as the medical nanites began repairing her broken ribs. "Sometimes you can't avoid taking damage, so you prepare your body to handle it." "But the risk?" Katal's form flickered with concern. "Was calculated." Maya watched as Kavax was helped from the arena, just like everything else. Later, in the commandant's office, Maya stood at attention despite her bandaged torso. Zarak studied her with all four eyes, scales shifting through complex patterns of thought. "You didn't just prepare for the combat," the commandant said finally. "You prepared for everything. The arena's architecture, the plasma channel frequencies, even your own injuries." "Humans have a saying," Maya replied. "Proper preparation prevents poor performance." We had to learn early that we couldn't match other species in raw capability, so we learned to maximize every advantage we could find, including letting your opponent underestimate you. Zarax's scales flickered with amusement. "Those early accidents, you could have reported them, but you used them as training opportunities instead. The best way to learn about someone is to see how they try to break you." Maya's expression remained neutral. Every attack revealed something about their tactics, their thinking, and gave me a chance to adapt. The door chimed, and Kavax entered. Their plasma channels were dim but stable, their movements still slightly uncoordinated from the overload. They stopped before Maya and executed a formal warrior's salute. "I owe you an apology," they said, their voice carrying the harmonics of deep respect. "I saw only what I expected to see. A soft, weak species that had no place among warriors. I failed to understand that there are many forms of strength." Maya returned the salute. "We all have our prejudices to overcome. Humans had to learn that lesson painfully when we first reached the stars. Perhaps," Kavax continued, "if you are willing, You could teach me some of your nerve cluster targeting techniques, and in return, I could help you better understand plasma channel harmonics. A smile spread across Maya's face. I'd like that. Commandant Zorax watched the exchange, her scales now pulsing with a new pattern, one that indicated profound revelation. Professor Tulera was right, she mused. The true strength of humans isn't in their ability to adapt physically, but in how they turn adversity into opportunity, how they transform enemies into allies through understanding. Over the following months, the Galactic Defense Academy underwent its own evolution. Training programs were modified to incorporate human tactical approaches alongside traditional combat techniques. New classes in adaptive strategy and creative problem-solving were added to the curriculum. And most significantly, more human candidates began to apply. Maya often found herself in the Academy's Grand Hall, watching new arrivals of all species gather. The whispers were different now. Did you hear about the human training methods? They can adapt to almost anything. Turned combat science into an art. But her favorite moment came when she overheard a young Tauran cadet telling their classmates, "Strength isn't just about what you're born with. Sometimes it's about what you learn to become." In her quarters that night, Maya recorded a message to the Earth Defense Council. The experiment was a success. The Academy is ready to accept more human students. We've proven that we don't need natural armor or built-in weapons to be effective warriors. Our greatest strength has always been our ability to learn, to adapt, and to help others see that evolution isn't just about physical capability. It's about growing beyond our preconceptions of what's possible. In doing so, we haven't just earned our place among the stars. We've helped create a new understanding of what it means to be strong. And maybe that was the most important victory of all. She smiled as she sent the transmission, remembering something her instructor back on Earth had told her. The greatest warriors aren't those who never fall, but those who always find a way to rise again. Through the window of her quarters, the 3 moons of Nexus Prime cast their light across the Academy's crystalline spires. Somewhere in those halls, future generations of warriors, human and alien alike, would learn that true strength comes not from dominance, but from understanding. Not from overwhelming force, but from the wisdom to know when and how to apply it. And that, perhaps, was the most human lesson of all.